far be it from me to have an opinion on, anything. But Gary Lineker. So he tweeted off about the fact that the government policy on trying to stop the boats across the Channel was akin to 1930s Germany. I don't think this has anything to do with freedom of speech. I think absolutely Gary Lineker, the twat, has every right to say anything he likes. I don't think there's a problem with using the phrase 1930s Germany, just as I don't think there's a problem using any language like that, because language isn't owned by one particular historic and tragic event. Language is language, and it can be used any which way that the person wants to deliver it. I don't think this is a BBC impartiality issue either. I think that's a pretense. I think it's a sort of facade for attacking Gary Lineker, because the BBC has never really been impartial. The BBC chairman sorted out an 800k loan or whatever it was, I don't care, for Boris Johnson, and the BBC were the ones who spewed forth what I see as propaganda over COVID and lockdowns and propelled Chris Whitty as the science, whereas in fact he was just Matt Hancock's kind of lapdog. So I don't think this is an impartiality argument either. I think that's just being used. I think what this actually is beyond the understanding of people in the media or presenting shows or sitting reading auto cues, because this is actually an issue that is only felt if you're an ordinary person trying to live amongst the impact of allowing hundreds of thousands of people into the country unchecked, and then giving them prime and prestige places in lovely hotels that ordinary British families have to try and save up for in order to have a holiday. This is really about the fact that Gary Lineker takes a massive wage from the British taxpayer. We pay Gary Lineker's wages. He lives in a squadrillion-dollar house and has a luxury lifestyle which is afforded to him by the British taxpayer, and yet he has no understanding whatsoever of the impact of flooding the country with people who are then put at the front of the queue. The issue with what Gary Lineker has said is that he has no idea about what it's like for ordinary people trying to get along with their everyday lives while this is being done to them by the government and the agencies and the Bleeding Hearts and the Claire from, blooming Calais, who I've met. And the reality is so far removed from Gary Lineker's life that when he speaks, it causes people to feel rage because they know he doesn't know. I mean, he had a pet refugee for a bit, a hand-picked pet refugee that was no doubt able to live in one of his many annexes and be looked after and tended to by his sprawling staff, right? That's not the same as, say, living in Skegness. And this is a true story, having your 87-year-old mother be kicked out of a nursing home because the Home Office has bought the places in that nursing home for illegals. And that nursing home that was home to your 87-year-old, I think somebody in there that was kicked out was over 100 years old, had been living there very happily, kicked out right before Christmas to give those places to illegals. You're not one of the mums trying to get an appointment at a doctor's or a dentist and unable to because other people have priority places in the queue. You're not a mum, Gary Lineker, trying to get her kid into a school that the kid might be able to get a bus to, or you might be able to drive to if you're allowed to drive anywhere anymore, and you can't get a place because people living closer who are prioritised because they are from a vulnerable community, they get the places first and so you don't. And so I think everybody is kind of losing what's really at the heart of this, pretending it's about freedom of speech, pretending it's about BBC impartiality, or holding up Gary Lineker as some sort of hero because he's speaking for those who are unfortunate or desperate, fleeing war and persecution. Whereas the reality, if these people took time to walk the streets and see this problem firsthand, as I do, is that ordinary British people are sick of being at the back of the line for everything and for being treated like second-class citizens in their own country, and then worse still, being labelled as any number of horrible things if they simply try and speak out about the way that they feel.